Now that we're well into the third quarter of 2025, it's a good time to look back and see how the automotive market is really shaping up. Lotlinx released its Q2 Vincensus Report, and today Kerri Wise, Chief Marketing Officer at Lotlinx, is going to take us through it. So thanks so much for joining us once again, Kerri. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So what are some of the key takeaways from the report regarding the current automotive market?
Yeah, Q2, as I've been talking about really in every single month within the second quarter, has been a lot. And there's been a lot going on in the industry.
Sure.
The industry was shaped by the aftermath of the tariff threats,
Yep.
with consumers really rushing to buy vehicles and avoid the threat of those tariffs in Q2. And we also saw really affordability concerns, right? With it being harder to be being approved, by consumers. But I think the bigger story in Q2 is really the shift away from new EVs towards more hybrids and gas engines. And so we saw new hybrid and gas engine sales increase by 7% in the quarter. When you look at quarter over quarter. And on the opposite end, new EV sales declined by 2%, even though inventory had increased. And so it comes back to a substantial price gap between new EVs and gas vehicles. It's a $10,000 price gap. A $7,000 price gap between EVs and hybrids, which was a major impact on sales. And so we anticipate overall sales to cool down for the rest of 2025. Dealers are going to have to rely a lot more on automotive maker incentives and digital first engagement strategies in this time period.
Yeah, the report did mention market headwinds for EVs, and it looks as though, with the $7,500 going away on new EVs, $4,000 on used EVs, that will have an impact, won't it, for the EV market moving forward? Because and it might even have an impact positively, right, in the short haul here, when people are saying, well, if I'm on the fence about getting one, now's probably the time to do just that, right?
Absolutely. We saw it with the tariffs in terms of consumers. When there's that threat, we pull ahead the demand. I think the primary challenge for new EVs is that price point. The average price point compared to gas and hybrid vehicles. The average new EV, even after a 2% quarter over quarter drop, was priced at almost $55,000 in Q2. And so, when we look at the overall picture, new EV inventory supply, when we look at our Q2 report, increased by 22 days to 100 days. It really indicates a lot of unsold stock despite the sales decline. And the other aspect, while new EV sales are down, there is a strong demand for used EVs, with sales jumping in our Q2 report by 11% Q2 over the previous year.
Wow.
And that's really due to more of a narrowing price gap relative to used. It's more affordable. So it'll be interesting to see, will more consumers navigate more to the used EVs?
Yeah, for sure. How are inventory and pricing trends impacting dealers in Q2?
Yeah, when we look at our report, overall new vehicle day supply decreased by 4 days, quarter over quarter, to 61 days. While we look at our used vehicle day supply, it increased by 2 days, quarter over quarter, to 40 days. When we look at aged inventory overall for used vehicle, it climbed by 7%. And so it really highlights a growing challenge with the older used car stock. The average price of this age inventory was almost $30,000. It was nearly $2,000 higher than the units actually sold for in Q2. So what this indicates to us is that dealers might be holding on to these vehicles that are priced above the market, which could be a challenge for them.
Yeah, for sure. How are Lotlinx customers performing amidst these market changes, and what differentiates their approach?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at our Lotlinx customers overall, relative to the broader market, despite the pressures of aging inventory and pricing and affordability, on average, our dealers have about 6% less aged new inventory, 5% less aged used inventory compared to not Lotlinx dealers. Now, that might not sound like a lot in terms of the numbers, 5, 6%, but when you really think
Yeah,
about an aged vehicle, the holding cost,
of
some say
course.
it's thirty to $50 per day per VIN.
That's right.
That when you're keeping a car, it's significant, and from a financial standpoint, we're seeing, when we look across brands, a significant majority of brands that are powered by Lotlinx are really outperforming the broader market. And so, a lot of that is due to, our dealers really leaning into what we call our VIN performance platform. They're looking at real time insights. They're looking at VIN specific insights. And what is that doing? That's enabling them to have the insight to know how to not only predict inventory risk and the idea that a car might stay on the lot too long, but also act on that inventory risk so
That's
that we
right.
can put actions into place to be able to move that car faster. And that's exactly what we're seeing.
Yeah, and that's something that I think Lotlinx is known for, is zeroing in on on that specific car that is in trouble in terms of the days in inventory, and saying this is where the money needs to get spent, not on the car that's going to be here for 2 days, right?
Yeah, I
What?
always say, from an inventory standpoint, that dealers have a lot of inventory blind spots.
Oh, no
And
question.
so, what do? We do the things that we're used to. We discount the car from a pricing standpoint. Maybe we invest more in promotion,
Yeah,
but oftentimes we don't really understand what cars are at risk, and really until it's really too late.
that's right.
And so I think with Lotlinx, what we're trying to do is give dealers that insight and really rely on the AI and what we call the machine in some ways,
Yeah.
to empower them to take action on at a VIN specific level. And I think that's the challenge that most dealers face, particularly in this market where things are changing all the time. In some ways, the machine can predict that better than any individual person could.
There's no question. Len Short, the founder of the company, Lotlinx, was a visionary and a
Yes.
pioneer in AI. I mean, we
Yeah.
talked about this on the show 10 years ago, and people were scratching their head going, machine learning and AI, I'm not really sure. And he just kept, plugging away at it, going, guys, wake up. This is the future, and it's here now, and this is the answer. And now, lo and behold, look at everybody's screaming AI, right? When you
Yeah,
guys have been,
I love the buzz of AI. It's the buzzword now, and I always
yeah,
say, like, I haven't been with the company long, so I can't take any credit for it. But
sure.
Lotlinx has been talking about it for a
Oh, no
decade
question about it.
or
Yeah.
now, and so yeah, Len was probably that crazy scientist at the time. People were probably dismissing him and thinking he was crazy, but here we are. Here we are. There's
That's right.
definitely a better way to manage your inventory, and I think he was, right at the forefront of that
Oh,
a decade ago.
there's no question about it. And so, what is Lotlinx's future or outlook for the remainder of 2025? And what advice do you have for dealers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we definitely see a slowdown in sales as we get into the second half of the year. And
Hmm.
I think, as I kind of mentioned earlier, dealers are going to have to be very diligent on really their strategies at a VIN inventory level, leaning into digital strategies, incentives, and really turning over every rock. But I think, overall, it's about paying attention to the market and understanding these headwinds
Yeah,
as early as you can, so you're not stuck with a car, holding on to a car too long. And
right.
so it's going to be more important, really, the digital strategies and leaning into that in the second half of the year than ever.
But there's no question about it. And hopefully, dealers realize now that, oh my God, the light just went off. Len's been talking about this at Lotlinx. The AI is the answer. And if you allow the machine learning to go to work for your dealership, you're going to be a lot better off. So, Kerri Wise, Chief Marketing Officer at Lotlinx, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Very much appreciate it. And love to have you back with your reports. We love it.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Great.
Good
Thanks.
seeing you.